the sort of thing you don't get to see very often. This is a sneak peek into a private collection of some very unusual magic. Talking about the latest issue. This is an article that our guest contributed about the magic of Tony Anverdi. So to share some of his magic, some of his collection, please welcome our guest, Chuck Caputo. Hooray! There's no audience to clap, so.
How are you, Ryan?
Hey, Chuck, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I'm excited to have you here and excited to see. I've seen, and some of you may recognize Chuck's face because he does share a lot of videos and a lot of magic. You're kind of on a mission to document this magic,
Yes.
and I'm very thankful for it.
Well, thank you. It's you know what? It's a pleasure being here today, and I certainly I'm very honored to be in the linking ring as well.
Yeah, so you wrote an article in this February 2021 edition titled "The Groundbreaking Creations of Tony Anverdi," and I think let's just back it up for a second. I know people can head into the magazine and read the article, but just a quick. Who is Tony Anverdi? What do we need to know about this guy?
Well, sure. I tell you, Tony Anverdi, Ryan, is probably one of the most amazing inventors in our time. He was a pioneer of microelectronic technology. He lived in Holland. He was born in 1925, I believe, and he passed away in 1995. And he created a lot of the groundbreaking material, which is what we use now. He put electronics to rising cards, talking skulls. He came out with the mental die, which is a fantastic effect where you drop the die into the opaque box. And his original version shot a signal, and it would light up a matching LED, which would tell you which digit was facing up. As a matter of fact, behind me, I'll be demonstrating the original Anverdi die.
Yeah, because I know they just came out with the re-release of it and a modern take on it. But I think that's the thing that stands out to me was that this guy was creating electronic magic in an era when this was not easy. You know?
Exactly. And you know what a lot of people don't seem to realize, Ryan, was he also invented a lot of liquid magic. Okay. He came out with a lot of trays where the glasses were next to each other. When you pour milk into one glass, the other glass would fill with liquid. And he had a unique gimmick on his trays, which was ingenious. You can actually pick that glass up, okay, once it filled up. And then you would switch them around on the tray. That glass would deplete as the other one would fill up. I mean, it was amazing, very visual. So he came out with a lot of liquid magic as well.
You mentioned in your article how he worked primarily in plexiglass.
That's right.
Which is not often seen and a unique kind of signature of his magic.
Exactly.
So I think this is an example of how that makes the magic so much more visual because it's literally see-through in a lot of cases.
Right.
So I have a friend here who always talks about creating magic and looking at materials you're using and the special properties of those materials that lend themselves to the magic. So when dealing with plexiglass, is there any kind of secrets of plexiglass that lends itself to magic? Why was he using plexiglass?
You know what? That's a good question, to be honest with you. But you have to remember, Ryan, plexiglass comes in all colors. Now, some of his things were clear, but quite a few of the effects, he used a lot of black plexiglass. He used orange, blue, green. I mean, all different colors. So it's not just clear, but his bottles and his pictures were clear, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you know, was he the craftsman behind this, or did he have someone that he would hire that out to?
Oh, no. He actually worked on everything himself, and he had a workshop. From my understanding, he was from Holland, so he was from the Netherlands, and he actually had a workshop up in his attic, from my understanding, and he would actually build everything himself, and he sold it all around the world, probably mostly to the United States. But, he was way ahead of his time. I mean, way ahead of his time. Ryan, I was fortunate enough to work with Del Rey back in the mid 80s. I'd say about 86, 87. So I became friends with Del Rey. He got me into electronic magic, and I built a lot of, my own props as well. But then at that time, I also found out about Tony Anverdi. And this is pre-internet. So I had to call different places and find out. And one of the first props I bought was his talking skull, which also I have behind me here, which I'll show you guys. But yeah, you know what? I mean, he was absolutely fantastic, way ahead of his time. And if he would have lived longer, I mean, I'd be curious to know what he would have made after, you know, years later even.
Yeah. Now, I know I'm, like, as I said, I'm super curious about this kind of stuff and the creative process behind it, but I don't want to get too deep into it. Would you mind sharing and showing something for us?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I'm going to step out of the way, guys, and hopefully this is close enough for you. If not, I can try and move the computer. Can you guys see me okay back here?
It looks okay to me.
Is it okay?
Yeah, I
All
see
right.
a tiny little skull.
Okay, yeah. What I'm going to do, guys, is show you a couple of his famous effects that he made really popular. This is the Anverdi mental die, which, as you mentioned, there are Murphy's is coming out with the new versions, and they're fantastic. They did a really good job. This is the original one, okay? And I'm going to demonstrate this to you. Here's the receiver, which is basically a little black box. And this is very old. It goes back probably 1976, 1975. If you look on here, there's numbers, and it's going to light up. It's going to tell you what number is face up. So if you hand the spectator the die, they can place it in. Let's say number 2 goes in. They drop it in. If it still works, yes, number 2 has lit.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Okay. And if the spectator was to place another one, let's go with number 5. And from across the room, you can discern the number 5 has lit. It's a little shaky, but it has lit. Okay. Now let me show you what's cool about this, Ryan. If a spectator would put number 6 in like this, nothing lights. So it's blank. All right. So you have an option here. Somebody either is playing games with you and they did not put the die in the box, or it's number 6.
Yeah.
So that's the choice. That's the choices you have. But I'm going to take this apart and show the viewing audience. I know this goes worldwide, so I think you guys will really get a kick out of this. The one spot is a screw. Okay. You mentioned
Because this is something the audience handles, so it has to be hidden so well.
Exactly. Now this is a little screw head. This is actually a piece of plastic, plexiglass. You mentioned plexiglass. He has a little piece of white plexiglass on a screw. I'll hold that up. I hope you can see that. And here's where the lid comes off. It's always on the one spot. That's the way he built it. And this is 30, almost 35 years old, and it still works.
Wow.
Okay, here's the battery. Okay, all the microelectronic.
Would you be able to bring that closer to the camera just so we can get a look inside?
Absolutely, I'll be glad to. I'm going to hold this right up to you guys, and I'll take the battery out. Okay. And if you look down there, those are the little pots, those little white round things. Those are potentiometers. This thing gets out of tune a lot. Okay, so that's the thing about his stuff. It did get out of tune, so you have to, which I'm going to show you how to tune some of this stuff, okay?
Yeah.
Let me come a little closer, Ryan, with the receiver. This is going to blow your mind. Here's the on-off switch. I'm going to turn it off now. And look at this in here. These are hand-wound coils.
Wow.
Okay, it takes 2 1.5 size N batteries. It's amazing that this thing even still works. And like I said, it does get out of tune frequently, but but it's a little difficult to tune. You have to be very patient, but you can do it. Okay, so that's the Anverdi mental die. Put this over here. Here we have, guys, this is the talking skull. This is the original Anverdi talking skull. And I'm going to put him right up in here, up on the front. Whenever you want, he could clack his jaw. Okay. And he's great at discerning card selections. You can make a fan. You can give the cards a shuffle. What I usually do is have a spectator select the card. It doesn't matter which one, really, as long as the skull doesn't see. I'll show you guys. Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
All right, put it back inside here. What I usually say is, this is the great Skeletini. I dug him up. Skeletini, would you help me find the card? He said yes. Was it an ace? Was it a 2? He says it was a 2. Was it a black card? How about a red card? He says it was a red card. Was it a diamond? How about a heart? He says it was a heart. That is the great Skeletini. But this is the Anverdi skull. And I'm going to bring this a little closer for the viewing audience to see as well. He's a beautiful, beautiful skull, and he's mounted on a clear backboard, and his jaw is actually up from the base. There's a magnet in his jaw, and in the base here, I'm going to open this up so you guys can see. It operates on a coil. There's an electromagnet. Okay, and when you push the transmitter button, this coil gets juiced, and it'll actually turn on and pull the jaw down. Inside the jaw, there's a very weak spring. Now, what I wanted to tell the viewing audience, if you want to tune these things, you're best to get a non-metallic screwdriver. Now, this screwdriver has seen better days, and this is a metal one. So you probably shouldn't really be using it, but it'll be okay. Right here is a potentiometer. That's a pot. Okay, if it gets out of tune, you're going to place this in and gently rotate it. You could go clockwise, counterclockwise while you're pushing the transmitter button. So it'll get it in tune. Now these have...
So just...
Yes.
So potentiometer, as far as I know, it changes the amount of current coming through or something like that. Is that?
Yes, it actually hones in the currents. It'll actually get it as sharp as possible, make it as crisp as possible.
Okay, so that was my question. When you're tuning this, what's the result of tuning it?
Okay, you know what? Prior to tonight's performance, Ryan, the skull was out of tune.
Okay.
So I literally had about 5 minutes to sit down and tune it. Okay, because when I pushed the button on the transmitter, his jaw would lag. It would like hang a little bit, like it was loose.
I see.
So I could tell it was off kilter. So I basically had to make a few adjustments. Here's the transmitter, which I wanted to show you what I did. Okay, this is the transmitter. What I did, I'm going to hold this up for you, is I attached a wire. I actually 2 wires, and I put it to a toe switch. So that way I attached it to a insole, and it goes into, this is designed for my right foot. So I place it into the insole, and my big toe will step on this. Okay, and that's going to throw a signal, and it'll activate the skull. So that way your hands are free. Okay, now here's the antenna. His things came with antennas. Nowadays you don't need antennas because it's modern. But he had antennas. There's a little pin on the end, and I would run it up my trouser leg, and I'd pin it to the inside of my leg. Okay, here's the on-off switch. Okay, but if anybody is looking for a switch, a toe switch, they are online. How should I say? Museums would actually use these things. You know, when you put things on, and if you take it off, it would actually sound off an alarm.
Oh, like an alarm, yeah.
Yeah, years ago, I bought them from tapeswitch.com. I don't know if they're still around. This is about 15 years ago. You might try it. Search different things. I'm sure you guys are good detectives. All right, let me show you a few other quick things here, Ryan. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Oh, it's very interesting stuff. This is... Now,
okay.
You said in your article that you kind of learned electronics because of this magic. Like you got into magic first and then went to learn electronics. So
yes, I did.
What did you need to learn in order to perform and maintain this stuff?
What I actually started doing, Ryan, you know what? Back when I started magic, I was heavily into sleight of hand. So I got my start with complex sleight of hand. So I still do a lot of sleight of hand. But after I worked with Del Rey and we became acquaintances, we'd talk on the phone every once in a while. He was a great man, by the way. Basically, I started to dissect RC cars, radio controlled cars. This was back in the 80s. And they run off of 2 common frequencies, channel 27 and 49, 26, 27, channel 49. They're fairly common, so they get interfered real quick. But I'd take it apart and I'd build different things, card rises and so forth. But like I said, it's a common frequency. So these things would pick up interference very quick. Then I switched to the key fob type of things, which is what we have now for the car alarms. Okay, so yeah, I mean, basically what I do is I design my own magic, or I take older magic props that were not electronic and I put electronics into it. So you can modernize them. And it's a lot of fun to do, you know what? And it's a fantastic hobby. When I have chance, that's what I like to do. But here's something kind of cool.
All right.
This is Anverdi's Dalamental. I hope you can see that.
Yeah.
And basically it's a black plexiglass box. It has an opaque lid. You can show it all around. A spectator can turn these dials and set them to whatever digit they want. See the little pink strips?
Yes.
Okay, like right now we're set at 5, 2, 7. Okay. and they can cover it, place a rubber band around it, hand it back to you, and I could immediately tell what that is. I'll show you what I'm doing. I have my wedding band on my pinky today, which I never do. I've been married for 29 years. but today I put it on my pinky for a reason. Because when you touch one of the screws, which is right here, that's a split screw. That's a switch, believe it or not.
Oh,
If a piece of
connect
metal,
the two halves.
exactly, if a piece of metal touches it, it'll light up. Okay. Now the one bulb is a little loose right now. That's what it is. Okay, but you can see there's a 5 and there's a 2 there.
Yeah.
Now this third bulb is kind of iffy right now. I'd have to open it up and actually tighten it a little bit, but that's what happens. Okay, it's an ingenious effect. This is called Dolomental. This is the original Dolomental. It goes back. You know what? I'm kind of bad with years, so I don't want to give a wrong year, but I would say maybe late 60s, somewhere around there. But somewhere in that area. Okay.
Oh, to me, the most fascinating part of that is that switch. Like, to me, that's the clever part of that. That's like,
oh, it's ingenious. It's ingenious. Absolutely. Ryan, here's a box that I built for the skull. I actually built this myself. I housed the talking skull in here, and it's black plexiglass and clear plexiglass. You know what? It's not so hard to work with plexiglass. Basically, what I use is a coping saw. A little disc sander will make it nice and square. I put the hinges on, but put a nice handle on there. So the skull, I built it specifically to house the skull. They'll fit right in there, and you could put a little pin in there to latch it. But that's how I carry it around. They keep it in good shape. I'm going to show you something else here. Like I said, he made a lot of liquid magic too, folks.
oh yeah,
Okay, now here's one quick liquid thing. Liquid by its very nature is messy. Oh, we all know that, right? Okay, now let's say this glass was over here, Ryan, and I really couldn't reach it with the bottle. You do this. Right. There you go. That's Anverdi's long neck bottle. Okay, and he hand fashioned everything. I mean, this is a plexiglass tube, and he fashioned the collar that goes around it. He cut a smaller tube that fits into place. It was a comedy gag. It was very, very funny. I've actually used that quite a few times. It went over very well. But let me show you a couple quick things, Ryan.
yes, please.
Anverdi wrote several books. These are his lecture notes. I think these are 1964. And I'll tell you what, there's number 1 and number 2. And these are still available. If you look around, they are still available.
I actually had one of those in my collection once
Oh,
from
great.
An estate sale.
Okay. But in here, he tells other things too. He also came up with some really clever ways with billiard balls, silks, rings and scarves. I mean, some really, really neat ideas. I'm on YouTube and I actually demonstrate a few of these. So if you check my website and my wife's website, you can, not website, if you search our key names on YouTube, you can see me demonstrate a few of his principles. In his lecture notes, he also shows, like I said, a lot of the scarves and rings, fantastic effects, and some of the liquids. He has a few of the liquid effects in here as well. Okay, in 1965, I believe, he wrote a book called Miracles with Liquids. And this is a really cool book. This is still available too. It is getting kind of rare, but he explains a lot of his liquid magic. I mean, brilliant, brilliant stuff. From glasses to the trays, which I told you about. He actually tells how to make them. Here's his tray, one of his trays. So if you're kind of handy, you can build one, or if you know somebody who is kind of handy, but some really cool stuff in there. Before he passed away, I believe in 1992, he came out with this book, which is 50 Years of Magical Creations. This is available too. You look around. They go for a couple $100 now at least, but it's a really cool book. It shows all his electronic magic, as well as I have some papers in here, as well as his rings and scarves. Some really, really cool magic. And he goes into detail about everything, how he makes the bottles, how he fashioned the bottles. That's in there as well. So if anybody wants to get into it, what I would stress to people is try to build some stuff. You don't know what you can do until you try. Don't be afraid. Give it a shot. One more thing I wanted to show you, Ryan, is one of his catalogs. This is one of his catalogs from Holland. And it's actually pretty cool. He would show us different items he would sell, and he would write the prices in before he mailed it out in the little circles. Here's his walking table, which I'm online. I actually demonstrate his walking table as well. So really cool stuff. Anverdi was a baker by trade. Most people don't know that. And he was a magical clown. And I have a picture. It's actually two pictures here, but it's the same one. This is Anverdi dressed as a clown. He was in a European clown. Isn't that neat?
Very diverse skill set.
Yes. Our clowns over here from the U.S. and different parts of the world do not look like this usually. I mean, he was really cool. Mm-hmm. And on the back, it just gives some information. But this is an original photo. And you know what? For years, I've been trying to locate footage of him, because he did make TV appearances, mm-hmm. and I have not been successful in finding any. So it's out there somewhere.
If anybody has a call out, if anyone knows anything, Chuck is dying to get this footage.
If anybody has a clip of Anverdi out there, send it to me. Place it on YouTube.
Yeah. Now, we did have one question come in from Jim here, asking, I don't know if this is based on something he heard or just a random question, did he have a Rubik's Cube effect?
Anverdi was building his props. I think the Rubik's Cube came out when I was in high school, about 1979, 1980.
Okay, so 79, yeah.
Yeah. I don't believe he jumped on that bandwagon. Yeah. I mean, he didn't pass away till 95, but no, as far as I know, he did not. For some reason, the Rubik's Cube has made a resurgence. If you remember, Doug Henning made it popular in about 1982, 1983. It was called the Enchanted Cube, and now it made a resurgence for some reason.
Now, another trick that Anverdi is responsible for, which has a resurgence, is color match.
Color match,
people
absolutely.
may not realize that is an Anverdi idea, that where you have the markers and you tell people what part to color, and you are able to predict the result.
That's exactly correct. The one Anverdi made, which I do have in my collection, I didn't bring tonight. Basically, you have two clipboards. One goes to the spectator, one goes to yourself, and there's two stands. Again, all black plexiglass, and there was pens that stood up, different colored magic markers. There was a 6-pen version and a 7-pen, I believe. And so the spectator would basically take a pen while your back is turned, and there was a chart drawn on a piece of paper, like a pie graph, and they would color in one part, put the pen back. You would take a pen with your back turned to them and color in, and so forth and so on. At the end of the routine, you would turn it around, and they would both match, hence the name color match. Yeah. But it was really cool effect.
And yeah, it had, I don't know if it was a year or 2 years ago that it seemed to just be everywhere again. Everyone's doing that trick.
Absolutely.
And, the technology has improved, but the cleverness and the idea is 100% Anverdi, 100% original.
Exactly.
Well, Chuck, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your magic. I know this is only the tip of the iceberg. There is in your collection alone. There's so much more, and you've been doing a great job of getting it out on YouTube. So again, I popped this up earlier, but just to make sure everyone's clear, search for either Chuck or Sherry Caputo on YouTube, and there are dozens of videos of just demonstrations talking about this old magic and sharing everything in your collection.
That's right.
I really appreciate that ability to see this magic that otherwise doesn't exist. So,
well, thank you for having me, Ryan, and thanks for the folks for watching. I hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you very much, Chuck. You have a good night.
You too. Bye.
And Chuck's article is in the latest Linking Ring. Here it is, page 23 of the February 2021 edition, talking about the magic of Anverdi and how Chuck came to be a part of it, or collect it, and a description of many of his effects. Well worth reading.